Can't hear us.
Been
No
muted.
sound.
We were muted the entire time. Wow. Okay. Thanks, guys, for letting us know. There we go. These are the things that happen when you're live.
Let's start again, guys.
Okay.
Welcome. Yeah, life insurance, guys. Life insurance. As you know, we bought a lot of properties, but one thing we did not do right was to properly insure our investments, properly insure our partnerships. And case in point, we had one partner that, you know, a few years into our partnership came to us and said, hey, listen, I know I said 10 years, but I think I have a brain tumor. And I think that I'm probably going to have to jump ship. Now, we have a shotgun clause in our joint venture agreements. We know that. We understand that. But, you know, life insurance, protecting our long-term investments is a really good idea that we never took care of. So we've got our good buddy here, Nathan. Nathan's down in Palm Springs with us right now, and we're going to talk life insurance, guys.
Yeah, and this is thanks for first of all telling us our sound wasn't on, guys.
Sorry, Mary, that was us, not you.
Also, thanks for saying hi as you come on and letting us know where you're from. We see people from all across the country.
Lip reading skills are nil.
Yeah. Okay, Sorry, George. You mean you didn't understand what we were talking about before, George? Okay, so tonight, guys, as Tiffany talked about, is we're going to go through some scenarios. You know, we all have partnerships that we set up. We work with other people. We work maybe corporation to corporation or person to corporation, whatever type of setups we work. What if something happens to somebody that we are a partner with in one way or the other? And now we could be in a tough position. We could be in a scenario that does not work well as far as real estate investment is concerned, and it can affect our investments.
All right, Tanis, I see you on there. I was thinking about you and everything that you guys are doing and how necessary this stuff is. So, guys, anyone want to know about this? I want to see some heck yeahs in the chat, all right? So, heck yeah, we want to know about life insurance. Sorry, Nate, this is what we do. He's like, you guys
Nathan's
are so
like, this
weird.
is weird.
This is so weird. Come on, guys. I want thumbs up. I want heck yeahs. I want all of it. So, I know that we all need it. Now, whether or not we actually plan for it is a totally different story. So, hey, Giovanna, nice to see you again. Heck yes, heck yeah, there we go. Here, they're going to roll in.
So just a little bit of an intro is Nathan is somebody that obviously deals with insurance, deals with life insurance, has experience in this space, and owns a brokerage, or how does that work?
Yeah. Run a brokerage.
Okay, runs a brokerage, and deals with people in the scenarios we're going to be talking about tonight, guys, on a regular basis. So we thought we'd bring him on. He's a friend that we've known for, well, I've known for a big portion of my life, and he's a phenomenal golfer too. So we've gotten a few rounds of golf in already.
This
so
is the power of knowing someone, though, guys. How many times have you asked your broker? How many times have you asked people to explain? How many times have you asked people to run you through the scenarios and what would we do in this case, in that case? Let's say I own properties in my corporation and I joint venture with multiple people and we all own it there. Let's say that we joint venture with multiple people, but of course it's all in their names because the banks have changed their minds. What if we're in a corporation and there's 4 of us, 3 of us, 2 of us? All these different scenarios, have we ever gotten answers? It's been tough, right? But this is the bonus of having friends in the business is we're going to get to those answers tonight. So can I see that it's you, or you're anonymous? You're anonymous. I don't know who you are. I'm going to guess it Ryan or Mel or someone. But anyways, yeah, anonymous. So, okay, guys, let's hit some things. Now, tonight
let's start with a scenario.
Yeah, and tonight is all in. So you guys, it's full participation. If you have a question and you want it addressed, we will try to address every single question that comes through as they come. But as you know, sometimes we get a little behind. So, but let's talk about like worst case scenario. Let's talk about someone's nightmare, Nathan. So I've got a property that I own with Mike and Julie. And Mike and Julie have a son. And Mike and Julie's son is very nice, but there's something going on. Now, what happens to me? What should I be thinking about?
Well, yeah. Hey, hi everybody. Yeah. I'm big fans, Corey and Tiffany. That's why we're here. But yeah, whenever you're in any partnership situation, it could be totally fine. You love your partner, or maybe even the primary person who's your partner. Mm-hmm. Maybe technically you have more than one partner, but you really only deal with one, right? Mm-hmm. So regardless of the circumstance, You could be thrilled to be doing business with them, but what happens if all of a sudden they are not your partner anymore and someone else is? So you could have partners where
so their beneficiaries or their children or their
yeah.
or their spouse, let's say you're partnered with one person, but their spouse is not interested in real estate, never has been, is supportive of them doing it, but not into it. Now that person, something happens, it's terrible. This is a morbid topic, but at the same time, really one we have to talk about. Something happens to them, and now their spouse is left as being your partner. Is that what you wanted? Is that what you planned for? Maybe it's their kids. Anyone thought of these things before? Because it's a little bit crazy. Okay, so what happens?
Well, I mean, the dangerous part is that they now have control over your business. They have a degree, the same control as your partner did, the same decision making as your partner did, right? And also because of that, maybe their skills, there's a lot of trouble connected to that. Their skills aren't the same. I mean, it's just uncomfortable the whole time, right?
It is.
Also, what if they want out? What if they want to liquidate assets of the business, or they want to demand value of their interests in the business that they've inherited, and the number is not realistic, right? So it's can be avoided if you have all those plans laid out in your agreements before.
And that's something that, you know, as much as we go through like in Ignited, of course, we have our investor questionnaire. And so we talk about these things ahead of time. But, you know, we might say, okay, so let's say that, you know, something happens to one of us. Okay, what's going to happen? Well, we don't want to have to be forced to sell. Let's say that we're in, you know, Alberta's market and oil has tanked, and now we're forced to sell. And all of our work that we've put in over these years is now wasted. So we don't want to put ourselves in that position. So we talk about what happens. Oh, okay. Well, the other one will buy out the estate. Perfect. Awesome. What's the flaw in that thinking?
What if you don't have the cash flow to do that, right? So you get into the partnership and everything's fine if everything runs according to the way you want for first 10, 20 years. But if something happens to one of the partners in the first year or two, the money that you might have wanted to accumulate, the value you would have accumulated to pay for everything isn't there yet. And so now you're in a situation where that inheritance comes into play. You're now partnered with someone that you didn't intend to partner with.
And guys, we talked about some of these scenarios. So I've been thinking, you know, we were talking about this last night. We were talking about, you know, some of you guys out on the East Coast, some of you in Vancouver, some of you in Toronto area. So you might have bought these properties, and in a very short period of time, there's massive amounts of equity, which is great, right? But as we all know, real estate is the long game, right? And we need, you know, now you to buy out your partner's estate, to buy out that estate, you're going to be talking, you know, $200,000, $300,000. Well, where are you going to get that money until you sell?
Well, and here's the other side of all of that we have to remember is because we're telling people and we're investing ourselves for, like you mentioned, the long game. We're in it for many, many years. And that's, you know, we've said this a million times. Real estate investment is not a get rich quick scheme. It is a get rich slow scheme. And that's really what it's all about. So the fact that it takes so many years to start making money in real estate, well, when years go by, people get older. The chances of somebody maybe dying, getting hit by a bus, getting something that happens to them, whatever it is, increases as time goes on. And so that's why this is a topic that is quite important, because we're saying hold these properties for a long period of time, have partnerships for a long period of time. Well, bad things can happen. So we want to be set up beforehand. We want to set ourselves up ahead of something happening, so that if and when something does happen that is bad, we're prepared for it.
So let's talk some scenarios. And guys, again, if you have questions.
Okay, well, let's talk about that first one that you brought up, Mike and Julie. So let's go back to that. So let's finish that up.
So, well, we know that we're going to use real life scenarios. So Sylvie and Andre are partnered with Mike and Julie. And, you know, they're doing a lot of great stuff in Ottawa. They're buying like crazy. So now, what if something happens to Mike and Julie? What are Sylvie and Andre's options?
Right. Well, I mean, obviously there's a million different scenarios that could happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some of those could end up tied to life insurance to fund them, but the big thing is to look at all those scenarios when you're making your agreements, or as soon as you can consider them, and get everything laid out and discussed amongst your partners, and then in writing. So in a legal agreement. So I know you guys do joint venture agreements, partnership agreements, whatever you want the scenario to be, you want to get that laid out within the agreement. So, and also, obviously, we're focusing on death because I sell life insurance. But there could be any scenario where your partner is incapacitated, right? Unable to carry out their role as a partner.
So a lot of times we hear that you can't really insure each other, or you have to insure each other's lives, right? So let's say that there is this partnership, something happens to half the partnership, this is within a corporation. Is there a product that says, okay, these two are a couple, something happened to them, now they are going to, or now the other party is going to buy out that portion of the estate?
Well,
can it be done in a corporation?
Yes, you can get, doesn't really matter who the entity is, right? So if the entity is a corporation, they can own a policy on another life.
Okay.
And a corporation.
So did you guys all hear that?
Okay.
Guys, this is a question that everybody wonders, everybody asks. Nobody seems to know the answer to. Can you repeat that a little bit? Repeat that one more time.
If you're a corporation, you're an entity that can own a life insurance policy on someone's life.
Okay, so Mike and Corey, we're going to get more into this in later, but there is the first part to one of your questions, and awesome news for most of us investors. George says, okay, so Joanne's his wife, and I are partners in our corporation. We just have the one property. What should we be doing for life insurance? And he says, Joanne's brother-in-law, yeah, you never know what can happen, right? So we are partners in a corporation. We have one property. What should we be doing to protect that? And their husband and wife.
So the husband and wife are partners.
Are both shareholders in the same corporation that owns a property.
Okay, and so there's no one else involved. It's just the husband and wife.
Yeah.
And then, so obviously what comes into play there is you're happy investing together. Are you, if there's only one of you, are you still happy to continue on in that business? Or do you want to have a situation where, well, okay, without my partner, I'm done with that business. I want to get out. And so you could insure each other's lives with each other as a beneficiary with an amount of money that you would deem would be needed
would
to
that be
essentially retire.
The
perhaps.
Mortgage amount? Would you insure the
Doesn't
mortgage
could be more.
amount?
Could be more.
Could be more. Right?
But probably as a minimum, it would be what would be owed on that mortgage
so
at that time.
I look at that scenario and I say, well, let's say Joanne does all the work and something happens to her. And George is like, well, now I don't know what to do. I don't know how to deal with tenants. I don't know how to do all this stuff because Joanne's been doing it this whole time. He wants out. So there's option A. One, sell the property. Or option B, have a life insurance policy that takes care of at least a time being until that property sells before they get out of it. Maybe it's vacant. Maybe it's who knows what all the situations might be.
Maybe you don't have the wherewithal to be dealing with that at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or
That's
the
a big
interest
factor
or the emotional strength or whatever it might be, right?
So that's a big factor. And when you're deciding how you want to protect yourself, you want to decide, okay, what's important to me? So everyone who's doing business, it's difficult, right? It's not easy to invest, to run a business, to do all these things. You're doing it for a reason most of the time. You're doing it for your family, your friends, something that's important to you. As long as you live long enough to accomplish everything, then everything's fine, right? But a lot of people like to protect against, well, what if something happens to me? I want to make sure that what I want to accomplish in the end is accomplished. So for instance, if you have two partners, say a husband and wife in a business, and one loves doing the business with their partner, but not without, or would have difficulty doing the business without the other partner,
right? Then
you really want to insure against that, and also you want to think, okay, not what is possible, what can my partner do, but do I want them to have to do that at that time?
Right.
And that's the nice thing about the life insurance is so liquid, very quickly that money is funneled in. and it's exceptionally reassuring to whoever's left behind.
Okay, so now I have a question for you, which gets a little bit deeper into the same scenario. Okay, so it's George and Joanne, and so I guess my question is, does George have a policy on Joanne and Joanne have a policy on George, or does the corporation have a policy on each of them?
And the corporation is the beneficiary.
Does the corporation have a first to die type of policy, or a last to, or like there's first to die, there's last to die, there's so many different options. So in these scenarios, if somebody is trying to figure out what works for them, what is the best thing for them to do? Like, sit down with Nathan and say, here's our scenarios and let's work this through, and what's the best type of policy? Or is there a standard blanket type of answer?
Well, there's never a blanket answer. You always want to check. The life insurance is actually the very last piece of the puzzle. It's the simplest piece of the puzzle. You want to check with your accountant. You want to check with your lawyer. In a situation where the partners are husband and wife, it's really simple, or much simpler.
Yeah.
To discuss what you want to have in place, right? So it can be very intricate, like the actual implementation of these things, but the concept is very simple. You decide what you want to be the situation if you die.
Right.
Okay.
So that's our starting point. Hey, that's point number one, guys.
Yeah.
You have to decide now, and we do that in our investor questionnaire. You have to decide now, what is the outcome that you're looking for? Is it to buy each other out? Is it for one of you to keep it? Is it to sell? What is the scenario? So, and even if it's to sell, like Corey said, there's holding costs, there's time, there's all these things that you may just want to insure for, even in smaller amounts.
So once you know what you want the scenario to be, if worst case scenario you die, then you go to your accountant and possibly to your lawyer, depending, and quite likely to your lawyer, because oftentimes it'll involve your will, although life insurance is separate from your will. Like the named beneficiary in a life insurance policy
can be totally
override anything in a will.
I didn't know that, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Will overwrite anything in a will.
Override anything. So if you somehow the will says that I left my life insurance policy to so and so, but the named beneficiary on the policy is someone else, that's what will take precedence.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
But that's sort of the least of your worries. That's like But in this process,
but it is interesting to know that.
Yeah, you want to decide whatever the situation is. You have partners, you don't have partners. If something happens to me, what do I want that? How do I want that to affect, or what do I want the situation to be for those that will be affected?
Yeah,
right?
I think that's the big question. How do you want this to affect your families? And in some cases, it's like, well, I want my family to keep that asset because I've worked hard for this, and I want that asset to continue to grow and provide what it was going to, but it needs time to do that. And in other, situations, it's my wife would kill me, or my husband would kill me if I left this property to them to have to deal with. They would hate me forever. So, all of those things. First point, determine what plan of action you want to take, and then work around. So it is a case by case. It's not like you can just kind of say, okay.
Yeah, no, it's 100% case by case, but there are advantages, primarily tax advantages for couples in a corporation. So corporations can take out what you call key person insurance for key people within the corporation. So then, there is some tax advantages, because obviously the cost for that is paid for by the dollars taxed within the corporation, not personal tax.
Okay.
Right.
So if it's applicable, then that is a good way to go.
And then the beneficiary would be who? The corporation?
Yes.
Because they paid the premium?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
okay, I have a question for you.
Just wait, listen.
George, it's tied in with this.
Term.
Okay.
Is it term, or is it term or whole life?
Both. There's two types.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you would amalgamate both.
Well, you have to decide on what type you want. So term is much cheaper. Term is all insurance. So all insurance, the whole basis of it is that the insurance company thinks it's highly unlikely they're going to pay.
Right.
So car insurance, house insurance, life insurance, it's called insurance because it's protecting against something that's unlikely to happen.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so affordable.
Right.
But whole life is what you call permanent insurance. It's guaranteed to pay. And so it's much more expensive because it's the combination of insurance and investment.
Interesting. Okay, sorry. I knew it. Shoot.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Okay, no.
Okay.
So here's my question.
Okay.
Okay, but going back to George and Joanne, they own this property in their corporation, and the corporation gets insurance on each of their lives, or they get insurance on each of their lives. Does it matter premium wise? Okay, the premiums they're going to pay for that insurance. Does it matter if the corporation takes it out, or does it matter if they do it personally? Does the premium for that insurance change?
No.
No.
Okay.
Because
The
it's
premium
based
is
on the
always
person.
Okay.
yeah. Premium
Okay.
in every case, the premium will be based on the life insured.
Okay. All
So
right.
insurance
So
company
it's
will,
regardless of who
doesn't
owns
matter
the
who
policy.
owns it.
Okay.
What sets the cost is the health of the life insured.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, which is another conversation even there. Okay, so here's a question. What if the partners own multiple properties and all mortgages together add up to a large amount? How do you insure for that? So I'm going to assume this is within a corporation where all partners are shareholders and there's a lot of mortgages, probably a lot of equity too, but a lot of debt. So how do you insure for that?
So to simplify it, every interested party would take out a policy upon the life that would affect them if it passed away. Right. So for the amount of their that's at stake for them.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's
So
say that
this is where it comes down to in this scenario. It really has nothing to do with the mortgages, because it could have something to do with the mortgages. If what they want is somebody dies, X person dies, I want all the mortgages paid off. Fine. Well, now you have to get life insurance for the amount of those mortgages, and you pay your premium based on that. But maybe the scenario is, I don't need all my mortgages paid off. But what I do need is 6 months worth of mortgage payments. And now I'm going to insure for that amount of money, which is significantly less. And so really what it comes down to is determining what you
the outcome.
Determining
Step
what
number
outcome,
one.
like what Nathan said earlier.
Yeah. Makes total sense. Okay, so let's say that there's 4 people in a corporation. We own, let's say, $10 million worth of real estate, but $5 million of that is debt. So we also have the liability of that. So let's say, again, there's 4 people in the corporation. We would each insure each other's lives for 100 or 1.25 million.
Well, you'd have to check with your accountant, right? So that's the thing. So you decide, what do you want the outcome to be?
Yeah. Okay.
So if one of us passes away,
yeah,
what do we want the outcome to be? Right.
Right. Okay.
And then check with your accountant and say, these numbers make sense.
So that would be 1.25 million would be if we all wanted to be able to keep our shares and keep those properties and not have to fire sale, then we would have to insure for the mortgaged amount.
That number you come up with, like the number you have to go over with your partners. It's all going to be connected to the outcome that you want.
Yeah.
Also the value of what you're talking about, right? So say if it's just we're getting into investment properties and so on, it's a little bit complicated. Let's just say it's just a regular corporation, their shares. So you could have the 4 partners have a decision that if any one of us dies, we buy out those shares. You have an agreement in place, for instance, like a buy-sell agreement that says if any one of the partners dies, that estate has to sell the rest of the partners their shares at such and such a price.
And that estate doesn't have the
so
choice.
That price is determined ahead of time,
right,
what those shares would sell for in a buy-sell agreement. Yeah. And then the insurance would be the vehicle to pay that price.
Potentially. Yeah.
Potentially. Could be a vehicle.
Yeah. So again, you start off with, okay, guys, we're in this together. What do we want to do if one of us can't be a part of it anymore?
Yeah.
And there's lots of things, there's lots of things. You could get arrested. You could be in jail. You could have a stroke. Or
you can insure for that.
Well, you can't get a life insurance policy for it, but you could prepare for it.
Right.
Yeah. You could talk to, okay, guys, what do we do if this happens? Let's get this legally. Let's get this plan in an agreement so that it kicks in under those circumstances.
I know some people that whole like in jail thing would really be probably a smart plan for.
Wow. Pretty rare. But the point is that's where you start. Like the life insurance may be a way to make sure that what you want to accomplish happens. But the real idea that anybody can use is, okay, we are connected, right?
Mhm.
We are connected. So what do you want to happen if I can't be there anymore?
Yeah.
You know, so you start there, and then you check with your accountant, and you check with your lawyer, check with your accountant, make sure everything you're thinking, like the values and so on, all makes sense.
Mhm.
And then you check with your lawyer to make sure you can get this legalized.
And I like
In the
you made a
agreement,
point, yeah, in an agreement. And you made a point yesterday when we were talking about this that you're also, for you, you're making sure that your family is taken care of in the way that you want them to be, just like any other life insurance that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, do we want them burdened with 50 properties that we went and got and they didn't want really a part of when we were alive, never mind after we're gone. So yeah, all of those things factor in, make sense.
Yeah, one advantage of getting these things figured out while you're alive is that usually your assets are at their peak value when you're alive. So because you are the business, in a lot of times it's your skill, it's your experience that creates a lot of the value of what you've accumulated, right? So, and that value, as soon as you pass away, right, or unable to be there, that can affect the value. So you want to get these agreements in place while they're at their maximum value.
Yes.
Because a lot of what we're working for is to pass this value on to people we care about. Right?
Yes.
And I know this might be a question that's out of your expertise, Nathan, but do you know, like, if somebody does not have a buy-sell agreement and they have, scenarios as we've been talking about tonight, what does it cost to go to your lawyer and have a buy-sell agreement drafted up? Like, is there a ballpark number that you have seen, or?
No, I can't. Yeah, I can't comment on what it's going to cost. Yeah,
okay.
And because they're so intricate and not necessarily intricate, but individual.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, and so for everyone's situation is completely different.
Yeah, it would depend.
And how much back and forth it goes, lawyer's time, et cetera, et cetera. You don't know. You can't really predict what it's going to cost.
Yeah.
But initial conversations should be reasonable, especially when you have a fair amount of assets at stake, right? You got a fair amount of money at stake.
Yeah.
So,
it's worth protecting.
There's certain situations where everybody's like, well, I love my partner's son. I expect my partner to hand this off to his son at some point. No problem, right? And so there's not a worry in the world. But what happens if something happens to your partner and his son at the same time? Right? So all these possibilities should be addressed, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And in a way that guarantees that the desired result is achieved. So you have to put some thought into it. It's a simple idea, but the process to get there can take some time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's so many different scenarios that can happen.
And hey guys, whoever Facebook user is, we need you to just give us a little more clarity. If this is a question, I need a little more clarity on that question. So just maybe retype it and let me know. And all right, we're just gonna scroll.
Okay, I have another question. Actually, when it comes to life insurance, especially on for investors on properties, we go and get a property, property A, property B, and we're qualifying for the mortgage. We're signing the paperwork, and they offer life insurance and disability and blah blah blah, critical illness, those types of things through the mortgage company. So Scotiabank, let's say, offers life insurance. Is it recommended to sign on the dot there, or is it better to get our own policy separate from Scotiabank when it comes to insuring that mortgage, that life? What do you?
Well,
most opinion there.
Most life insurance advisors would recommend you get your own policy. One of the biggest reasons is because the value, say you insure your mortgage for a certain amount, as you pay it down. That number decreases, right? Whereas an individual policy, whatever you insured for originally, that amount stays the same.
Exactly.
Right?
So I have a $500,000 mortgage. 7 years into it, it's worth $375, let's say. If I have my own insurance, I go see Nathan, I get my own insurance. My policy still pays out $500,000 instead of just the $375 being paid out.
Exactly. Yeah, and some of the other.
But yet you're paying you're paying as if you're being insured for $500,000, but you are
your premium doesn't go down as the mortgage as the mortgage balance goes down.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And when you get your own policy, vast majority of them, the life insured is underwritten. So the insurance company takes a look at your health before they approve it. Whereas in most lending policies, they do that underwriting after. So there is a chance, very rare, but there's a chance that you actually don't qualify for that insurance that you think you have.
Okay.
It's very
Really?
rare. It's rare, but it's possible that
Wow.
could happen. So whereas when you go and get your own personal policy, that's all done up front.
Yeah.
And so the only thing that could be a problem for your policy would be fraud.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So as long as you're telling the truth, as long as it is what it is, you're all good.
yeah. So
These guys.
but in general, that's you would recommend getting your own individual policy. There's advantages there.
There we go. This is excellent info. Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks, Nathan. Okay, so now let's say that and we're just throwing out scenarios because there's so many different scenarios that we all work within. So let's say that I own a corporation, and honestly, I know you already answered this for me, but I thought that the answer would be no. You've said the answer is yes. So I own a corporation. I buy properties and then I bring on partners after. So all the properties are in my corporate name, but I've got, a property with this person, that person, this person, and all of them are for different mortgages, different mortgaged amounts, but they're all held within my corporation. So do I take out a policy on them? Is that prudent on my part in case something happens, or do they take out the policy on me?
So every entity, right? Or
so corporation or person is an entity.
Every entity can take out a policy on the life that would impact them if it died.
Okay, so
okay.
Good
so
news,
that
guys.
answers this question
Good
as well.
news, guys. Okay, I have properties held in my personal name.
Properties held in my personal name. Can my holding company hold policies on my real estate partners? They have nothing to do with the holdco. So
okay, that's a good question because we talked about the three parties. Explain that part. There's three parties to a life insurance policy. There's the beneficiary, there's the owner. Okay,
Yeah.
so explain that.
Yes.
That was
Well,
good.
so every policy has an owner, and it has a life insured, and it has at least one beneficiary. And so those can all change. They can all be three different entities, you might say, right? So whenever you're in these situations and you're trying to protect yourself, essentially you got to identify, well, how much do I need, right? So what are my interests in this arrangement? What is the value of those interests? If so-and-so passes away,
Right.
what's at stake for me?
Mhm.
And so you could get a policy with the entity on the life of the entity that is your concern.
Yep.
And then make yourself the beneficiary.
Okay.
Okay, you just said something. The life of the entity that is your concern. So if the corporation is my concern, well, a corporation can't die, right?
So the corporation can be the owner and the
Okay.
beneficiary.
Policy.
But it can't be the life insured.
No, there's always a life insured.
Okay.
Yeah, which obviously can't be a corporation.
So
Okay.
the way I think of that, the easiest is, for example, a family member of ours took out a life insurance policy. All the kids did on their mom, so that when she passed, the funeral wasn't a big expense for anybody. And so they paid the premiums until she did pass, and then they had money for the funeral. And one of the kids was a beneficiary. So one of the grandkids was a beneficiary, just to keep it all okay. So there was an owner, there was a beneficiary, and then there was the person that was insured. And all three of them were three different people. So for me, that's how I kind of compartmentalize it. Okay, so it's Melanie, as always. All right. Okay, so if you guys have partnerships that you're needing to insure, and we're going to talk about this in United, we're going to go jump over there and do more like one-on-one, obviously stuff that like we always do. So if you have a partnership that you're wanting to insure, the good news is, yes, you can. Inside a corporation, outside a corporation, one party being a corporation, others being personal, doesn't matter whose name things are in, as long as there's an entity involved, again, for simplest terms, let's say some sort of corporation or a person, then you're all good to get some sort of insurance. But just like every one of us are individual and all of our health is completely different than one another. So would those policies be? So let's talk about this first to die, last to die bit. That was an interesting conversation. Yeah, Ryan, are you here? Where are you, Ryan? This is a good topic for you tonight. Okay, so let's talk about this first to die, last to die stuff. What was all that?
What is all that?
What is all that?
Okay, so
Okay, so for example, someone recommended, and we're going to talk about this in Laser more, that their financial advisor said that they should get first to die insurance
for estate planning purposes.
Okay, so how would that help us, Nathan?
Well, there's advantages in that your cost could be affected, right? They could be lower if it's last to die. So because the first to die will go to the risk of the highest risk life insured.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so lastly, I would probably go to the other one. So, but you'd have to check. You can't just guarantee that. It's very.
Mm-hmm.
I would last to die and first to die policies are becoming less common.
Mm-hmm.
There's not necessarily a pricing advantage compared to individual policies.
Mm-hmm.
So, if a financial advisor advises you that that's the best policy for you, they're probably right. So you'd have to talk to your life insurance advisor, find a policy that would work for that. But the biggest caution that I would give on joint policies is that if something happens in that arrangement,
mm-hmm.
which is becoming why they're less common now, marriages don't last, partnerships don't last. And so say you've got this coverage, and then all of a sudden that situation changes. Now, the older we are, now we're older, to get that same amount of coverage in a different policy
mm-hmm.
Is going to cost more.
So it's instead of getting a joint type policy and it's last to die or first to die, whatever it might be, it's better to just get kind of individual policies because like you said, what happens if the marriage, what happens if things change? Now you're starting all over again.
Yeah,
and
so
it could be more expensive.
You can't really say in any situation this is better or that's better because it's so custom. But it's something you have to consider. You have to compare the value. Compare, is it better? Like, are we really saving anything by getting one of these joint policies,
mm-hmm.
or should we just have separate policies?
Yeah.
And the thing is, there could be differences in health. So
I was just going to get to that.
So if you have differences in health, mm-hmm. obviously the affordability is going to be affected. And so maybe you're like, well, I mean, we only have so much income available for this sort of protection. If you have a policy where both lives are tied together in the policy, you can't adjust that.
Yeah.
So maybe it's best you get further, and perhaps one is uninsurable. So you never know.
So let's talk about that for a minute because we talked about this too. So let's say that I've got perfect health. And I'm like, young. I'm way younger than Corey is. So I'm clearly going to get a lower policy premium than he is because he's older. So he's going to have a higher premium. So if we're partners.
I eat fries. She eats salads.
Right. There we go. So you would think that would make me healthier. However, in reality, it doesn't. But so let's say, he does. Let's say that I've got the better health. His premiums are going to be more. Would it be fair then? And I know, in my opinion, I think it would, but would it be fair to say, okay, I'm going to pay the premium on my term policy, and he's going to pay as partners. Let's say we're partners, on a property. He's going to pay the premium on his policy because it's all based on the person.
I can't tell you what's fair or not. That is between 100% between whoever's involved, right? Yeah,
I think that's
a partnership, fair. Right? So
I think that's fair.
So
because that's the thing. Because what if now that would almost so? For example, if I were looking for partners then, and I knew that we were going to have to self-insure these partnerships, and that could come off cash flow depending on how it is, and like Nathan mentioned, through a corporation, the corporation can pay those fees, and there's lots of tax advantages that can be done. But I'm looking at it going, okay, do I want to partner with, let me see, I've got a lineup of people. I've got a 27-year-old healthy whatever that I'm going to now have insurance, a premium for. Or I've got a, 47-year-old whatever. So now does that become a consideration?
Okay, I say
it
no.
takes that out. It takes that
no.
out if you pay your own premium.
Here's the thing, guys, is when it comes to investing, when it comes to real estate investment, and like we talked about, this is a long game. We are not buying it. We're not buying it and partnering with people based on a premium for life insurance and whether that's high or whether that's low. We're buying it based on what it's going to bring us. The value is going to go up, and the mortgage is going to be paid down. The
I'm
cash
buying
flow
that
we're going to get
property anyway.
But
it's just whether I go
if
with you or you.
are you talking about, okay, I'm going to partner with this guy who's has a higher chance of dying than this girl over here that has a lower chance of dying?
Doesn't it become a consideration?
Is that a consideration? For me, that would not be a consideration.
I think
but
it would be
maybe
for
for
me.
some people it is.
I think it would be for me.
Interesting. Never thought of it
when
that
you
way.
have a whole lineup of people. Now you're like, where's the premium? So I think that would take it out, is if everyone just accepted and acknowledged taking on their own premiums. Okay, so we had a question here. You may have mentioned before that jumped on, but would you value the managing partner differently than the money partner from an insurance perspective? So that would be the person that's doing all the work versus the one who gave the money for the investment.
No, the insurance advisor would never make that evaluation.
Right.
So the insurance advisor is just literally the last piece of the puzzle. So the partners or whoever is involved with their interest, they decide what's important to them, what they feel the value is at stake for them. Probably the wise thing to do, check with your accountant, make sure your values are right.
So
check with your lawyers, and then the final piece of the puzzle is you go to an insurance advisor, and you say, okay, this is how much coverage we want.
Okay, so let's talk about key man. Did you say key man? Is that what you called it?
Key person.
Key person.
Key person.
Key person insurance. Okay, so based on this, a managing partner who's doing all the work every day versus the money partner who just put money in. Maybe talk about what they must have missed the beginning. So what was key person insurance?
So key person insurance is like for any company, business, they can identify someone as being important to their business. So they have a certain role or effect that if they were to pass away would be detrimental financially to the business. And so insurance companies say, okay, we recognize that. That's what you might call an insurable interest. And so we will allow you to have a policy on that person's life. So so let's say you have someone who's a brilliant mind in real estate investing, and whatever their role is, and if they pass away, this is going to highly affect how much money you're making. Well, you might say, well, I need to insure that person's life because if I lose them, I'm going to lose a lot of money.
Right. But you may not need to insure everybody within that corporation. That's what key person?
Yeah, key person. So it's just a term when they're labeling the purpose of insurance, a life insurance policy. They might say, oh, it's for business insurance, it's a key person insurance, it's a buy-sell agreement. And so whatever the purpose is for the protection that the policy is going to provide, they use a name for it.
Yeah. And so guys, when we go through all of this topic as we're talking about tonight, it makes me think of a few things. Number one, we have to have conversations, and we have to get to know our partners, and try to make some decisions and have conversations ahead of time that go beyond just a property investment and maybe the market and the neighborhood and what type of property it is, but go beyond that and saying, you know what, we're going to be working together for X number of years. And if something were to happen, if this were to happen, that were to happen, how are we going to handle it? And so one of the documents that we suggest using to kind of prep for this is, of course, the letter of intent. And if you want to get a letter of intent, that's on our website. Just go to investorlife.com and you can click and download a letter of intent for free. But beyond our letter of intent and beyond what our goals might be as a partnership, money-wise and business-wise and time period-wise and all that kind of stuff, we have to have the tougher discussion as well.
Like
and
Craig
some of
said,
the,
it's a
like,
tough
I was
topic.
going to go back to that. Where was it? Craig mentioned
Right
this, that they envision how we want it to look if one of us passes away. Then it's more clear and what we need to insure for. It's a hard topic to think about and envision, but very important, so we don't leave a burden.
Don't leave a burden.
And that's really what it's all about, is these are tough conversations to have, and they might make us feel uncomfortable. And we might say, well, you know, I'll do that conversation next week. And then next week turns into the week after, and turns into the month after, and the year after, and we don't have that conversation. But these are conversations that we should have with our business partner.
Now, we have that in the investor questionnaire for those that are in Ignited. Okay, the investor questionnaire has all those questions. But then do we take that and put it into, in fact, either a buy-sell agreement or a clause in our joint venture agreement that covers those discussions? That's the important part. So you have now this agreement of how we're going to deal with it. But what if you don't have the money to fund that agreement? And that's where ensuring those things comes into play. So Ryan had a question, and I didn't read the whole thing. Ryan is here. Okay, so isn't there a serious risk with getting it? Hear me out. I get coverage on myself, and Melanie, his business partner, hires a ninja assassin to hunt me down and take me out for the insurance payout. Shouldn't we be worried? I had actually the same question. I never did get to ask you that. Yeah, for sure. Or her and Ashley conspire to take you out. That would also make sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, in every movie, if someone gets murdered, they find out that if you had a life insurance policy on them, you're in trouble. But obviously, that's highly unlikely.
And now we're talking criminal action. So
you're making it.
That's
you
a whole
probably
other
picked
realm.
a better partner than that.
I mean, probably picked a better partner. And Ryan, I think that if it was going to be done, it would have already been done. That's my thought. Oh, that's hilarious. Okay. Yeah, no extreme sports. Huh? Yeah, whatever. That's funny. Okay, so,
yeah.
How is your health? Yeah, no. I'm just bringing up a point.
I love it.
And Grant,
you have to understand why you're getting insurance.
Yeah,
exactly.
For sure. Legal structure, yeah, all of that absolutely determines it, and your exit strategy for sure. All right. So, any other questions here that I am missing? I don't think so. Okay, yeah. I think we're good. All right, guys. So, you know, the good news that came out of tonight is that a lot of the questions that we've had for a very long time, every question that came in from Ignited, Nathan has been able to have an answer for. And the answers have been yes, 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 and yes. Can you do it? Yes, you can. So there's so many of us that have asked these questions over the years to our brokers, and the answer has always been, I don't know. And that's because it's a lot to think about for someone who doesn't do this every day. But that's, you know, this guy has put in the time and looked into what's a joint venture partnership. How is it structured? How does this work? What if it's a, you know, blah, 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 blah. Gone through it all. And the answer is yes, they can be insured. So
thank guys,
you
yes,
for doing
thank
all
you
that work, 'cause I know it was
for all
work.
the answers, Nathan. That it's awesome, and it's awesome to have that clarity, and it's awesome to know. And what I did notice is a lot of your answers were very similar. It comes down to what is your end result you're trying to attain, and how can we make sure we get there.
Yeah.
And life insurance can be a component of that. And there's agreements that we may want to be a part of it. And there's agreements that we can put into place ahead of time. So it really, guys, one thing that I'm taking away from this is it comes down to having these conversations ahead of time with the people that we work with. And it might be difficult, but if we have them, we're going to be in a better spot.
So number one, you're going to have those conversations like Nathan said. What outcome do you want? Okay. Number two, you're going to put that in writing in some form, buy-sell agreement or joint venture clause. And then number three, you're going to make sure that you have the funds to fund that agreement, because there's no point in saying, oh yeah, well, I'll buy you out. And it comes down to it, and you need a couple $100,000 that you don't have at that time, or your estate doesn't have at that time, or whatever it might be. So 3 main points. Hopefully you guys got those out of tonight.
And one last thing I wanted to clarify is if any of you have questions, you want to start putting a policy in place, you're at the point where maybe you have talked to your accountant, you've talked to your lawyer, you want to run through a scenario or two, have a consultation with Nathan. He is available. His email is on the screen. It's nathanc.brickandmortarinsurance@shaw.ca. Feel free to send him an email and get that conversation started. So Nathan, you do work with anyone in Alberta. That's where you're licensed. Right. And if people are outside of Alberta, somewhere else in the country, then you can hook them up with someone else.
I could probably get him a referral.
Probably a referral. Okay, awesome. So there we go. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming on,
Thanks,
Nathan.
guys,
We
for
appreciate
joining us.
you coming all the way down to Palm
It
Springs
was
Just for that.
tough thing
this.
to do.
Yeah,
And a
tough,
couple
tough.
rounds of golf, and
So
that's put us a lot of fun.
So hey guys, we've got next week we've got George Doobie, and he's going to be coming on talking to us about that LPGP structure from an accountant's point of view, and we know that that's all the fun stuff. But join us next week, and of course, those of you that are ignited, we're going to see you over in Laser, and Nathan will be there to answer questions individually should you have extra questions that weren't addressed and something that's a little bit more involved. All right, guys. Cheers, everyone. Have an awesome week, and we will see you next week with George Doobie
From BDO.
All right, cheers.